I took a day off from this yesterday. Why not jump in today? So, the lows, the franchise lows for the Carolina Hurricanes. And I've included the Hartford Whalers because why not? The Hartford Whalers, of course, went through their shares of lows. And it's really kind of strange because this is a team that has great success in the playoffs. They make runs to the conference finals, Stanley Cup finals, win a Stanley Cup in '06. But when they don't do that, they don't make the playoffs, and very often they're mediocre or worse. And so it's a strange franchise that way. And their most losses, Cam Ward, 244 to lead the franchise. Sean Burke had 131 as a Whaler, mostly. Those are the guys that have taken the most losses. And Sean Burke, I want to throw in, when he was playing for the Whalers, there were plenty of nights where he was the best Whaler on the ice, and he was the only reason the score wasn't more lopsided the other way. I think he played some of his best hockey as a member of the Whalers. I really do. Now, for lost asset, you know what? I went through Carolina. I did. I went through Carolina, and I'm like, all right, there's got to be somebody in here that you look back and you go, man. Now, you could kind of look at Jeff Skinner, but you look at that contract and you think, well, Carolina couldn't afford to sign that anyways. So they made the Skinner deal. They got Skinner gone. I could look at maybe Lindholm. Like, there's nobody who really stands out with Carolina's history that you say, man, they really lost out when they traded that guy or they lost that guy. I thought about looking at their drafts, but that's more of a draft misses video that I can do at some other time. Ron Francis with the Whalers is the one that stands out as throughout the history of the franchise. And of course, he came back and played for Carolina. So it's hard to find an asset for me with Carolina that I say, oh, that's a really big loss. Like I thought, well, McIlhenny, but they didn't have a huge step back with McIlhenny, and it's not like he's putting up great numbers with Tampa. So I don't know. Even when I was trying to come up with an ugly jersey for Tampa or for Carolina, this is as close as I can get because people didn't like it because it had the flags on it. And yet I like this jersey. I don't know why nobody else liked it. I liked it. I don't know. I thought it looked nice. I actually preferred this when they got rid of the flags. I thought, well, that's a nice looking shirt, and it's a little bit different. I always thought the flags were kind of busy looking, but the people didn't like. They really liked the flags, and they didn't like when they changed away from them. So I don't know. I like Carolina jerseys. What I'm trying to say, not that many that are fantastic, but there are some really nice ones, and there aren't any that I look at and say, well, that's ugly. Whereas with most franchise histories, I can look and go, that's an ugly jersey, and wear that for the ugly jersey portion of this video. Short-term coach John Cuniff, 1983, had a record of 3-9-1. Again, we're looking at likely, coaches that just didn't last very long. Interestingly enough, shortest term for Carolina is their current coach, Rod Brind'Amour, who has a record of 84, 54, and 12. I'm going to go ahead and say he's not going to get fired anytime soon, so he won't be on the short-term coach the next time I do this, say 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, whenever I do this again. Not in the Hall of Fame, so this is the highest scoring forward that's retired, that's eligible for the Hall, that's not in there, or I guess it would be forward or defenseman. Highest scoring player in their history, and it's Kevin Dineen. Dineen's not going in the Hall of Fame, but Kevin Dineen was a guy who could score points, goals, and he could play that tough side of the game as well. Goaltenders, Cam Ward. I don't think he's Hall of Fame, but he did have a Stanley Cup there in '06. And Mike Liut stands out as a Whalers goaltender who had some wins along the way. And again, much like Sean Burke, Liut played really well for the Whalers. He was a good goaltender. Just the team in front of him was inconsistent and had its problems. Now, their longest drought is one that recently ended. Between 2010 and 2018, they went 9 seasons without any kind of Stanley Cup appearance. And it was tough. And so when people talk about, look at their attendance. Yeah, and look at what they've had to deal with. Trust me, when we get to Florida, it's going to look ugly as well. And so for these teams in the South, you want to point at attendance, okay. But I'm going to, again, and again, point out they haven't been very good either. So, yeah, Carolina went through quite the drought. Now, the year 1, year 11, again, I'm using Hartford and Carolina. Hartford's first year, 79-80. 27, 34, and 19, 73 points. Interestingly enough, the record for the Carolina Hurricanes their first year was 33, 41, and 8, 74 points. So at the time they left Hartford, they weren't very good. But they couldn't continue in that building. Year 11 in Hartford, 89-90, 38, 33, and 9 record for 85 points. Respectable. 2008, 2009, this is after they won their first Stanley Cup. 45, 30, and 7, 97 points. And of course, they went to a conference final that year because that's what they do when they make the playoffs. They don't lose in round one because they're Carolina. So, some success since they got to Carolina in between all of this. And of course, that 2009 run was right before their 9-year drought, which ended last spring. And then this part of the reason why this year I went, well, they'll probably fall back out because it's what they do. You go to the conference final and then you rest for 9 years. Now, their lowest point percentage against any team on this board, or in the NHL, sorry, 370 against the Calgary Flames. They struggle against the Flames. And the most goals against per game that they allow is against Calgary, 3.91. Now, goals for per game, their lowest number, is against one of the 90s and beyond expansion teams. It's Columbus, 2.44 goals per game. So they allow a lot of goals against Calgary. They don't score as many against Columbus. And Calgary, traditionally, they struggle against. So I thought that was an interesting points percentage because we're not seeing Edmonton as much in these as I thought we would. Lowest points per game and minimum of 100 games played. And again, I separated between Carolina and Hartford for this. Carolina, Darren Langdon, .041. He was a pure enforcer. He really was. Pure enforcer. Jesse Bullery, same thing. .067. Jeff Daniels, .069 for him. Stephen Halko, .097. And Westland, .108. Now, on the Hartford side of things, Brad McCrimmon, .103. You'll notice that it's a .10 because higher scoring during the Hartford era. Chase, .117. That's Kelly Chase. LaDoucher, 1.22. Tied with Ed Kostelic. And Jim McKenzie had a 1.23. So, there you go. Now, with lowest save percentage, minimum 50 games played again. You see the difference between the eras here. For Carolina, Scott Darling, .888. So, again, you have to have played 50 games. Eddie Lack, .902. And Peters, .904 in his time as a backup for the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, on the Hartford side of things, Visor, .864. Steve Weeks, .868. And Greg Millen, .868 as well. So Steve Weeks and Kevin Weeks, spelled differently. Kevin Weeks played for Carolina, had a save percentage as a Carolina Hurricane above that .904 mark. Thus, he's not on the board. Goalie with the best name, I went with Peter Sidorkiewicz for the Hartford Whalers. Peter Sidorkiewicz, really one of the great all-time names in the NHL. I intend to at some point do a team of all-time greatest names. Probably going to be a lot of Finns up there, and in this case, a guy with a Polish last name, and Sidorkiewicz. And I went with Artur Survey as the most fun name of any of the Carolina Hurricanes goaltenders. There were a couple I looked at. I thought, well, I could talk about them. No, I'm not gonna mention the other ones. But there were a few fun ones in there. Interestingly enough, of course, David Ayers shows up in their list of goaltenders. And yet, even though he had a save percentage of .800 in the game he appeared in, and his goals against coming out of that game was 4.18, he's remembered as being victorious and kind of a folk hero. The thing with Carolina is, and this goes back to Hartford as well, is sustained success. There has never been a time of sustained success, whether you're looking at the Hartford Whalers or you're looking at the Carolina Hurricanes. I think there are a lot of people out there that look at Whalers jerseys and Whalers merch, and especially I would think if you're younger, where all that Whalers stuff looks really cool. The Whalers were, for a long time, very mediocre. And they had Ron Francis, who was a leader of that team, and he certainly took some blame when that team wasn't necessarily up to what people had hoped for with their standards. I don't think it helped that they played in a pretty tough division as well, where they were always up against Boston or Montreal or the Buffalo Sabres in the 80s. And then the Quebec Nordiques were pretty good during those parts, too. The Adams division was rough. So while we all remember that the Patrick had some really good teams that would miss the playoffs, the Adams had some really rough matchups, and the Hartford Whalers were often on the wrong side of that. The Carolina Hurricanes have kind of continued that tradition. Right now, they're in the toughest division in hockey. I did the, proposed maybe this is how the standings will be next year. This is my prediction kind of thing, like wildly, way early prediction for next year. And admitted in that video, and I admit it here now, the Metro is the toughest division in hockey, and trying to predict it is also the toughest division to do that with out of the entire league. Central's close, but I would think the Metro's the toughest. And so I think the real trick for Carolina moving forward is going to be to keep this young core they have together, so that the next time I do this, there's no real changes on here other than maybe goals against per game, lowest points percentage. But when we're talking about the lows, maybe Carolina's through the worst of it. And again, this jersey might be symbolic as well of the fact that this was a team that went through some rough periods, but they were never really that bad. So you look at those 9 years outside the playoffs, they were never really that bad. They had their rough years. But it's just when you look at the comprehensive picture right from when they came in 79-80 until now, it's been trying to maintain that level of success. And we'll see if they do it going forward. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always, regarding the Carolina Hurricanes or the Hartford Whalers. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Very, very close to 138,000 subscribers as I'm recording this. So kind of an exciting time. And thank you guys so much for helping me get to that level. And remember, stay as safe as you can during these tough times. Don't forget to wash your hands regularly. And again, this is just going forward. Honestly, just going forward, it's good advice. So it's good to throw that in there. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It means a lot. I will talk to you again soon.